Okay, guys, now we're back on part number five. Part number five is about, providing a sense of providing my experience or sharing my experience to be more precise. But sharing my experience about France and the long lasting effects of the colonial legacy, racism, and discrimination. Okay. So as you can see, this is what I want to share with you guys is I'm uniquely positioned to offer some perspectives about the history and current state of France about racism and discrimination, as I was born there and raised in France until being an adult, and I could travel in different places: UK, US, Canada. So I come from a mixed heritage. My father was French, white guy, a fantastic. My father was a fantastic human being, and my mother as well. She was from Cameroon in Africa. Despite the fact that France is one of the most beautiful countries on earth, I I personally had bad taste about my experience and the way I was experiencing, life in France due to the long-lasting effects of racism and discrimination. Even though I was mixed, it didn't change that, they couldn't see me as white, so to speak. Therefore, there were some elements of racism and discrimination naturally. So this is my personal analysis. Some people might disagree with me. That's fine. But once again, it's entirely my personal analysis of the situation, and not something that I've read somewhere. But it's my personal taste, my personal view on that. So there's a complicated story about France, about the religious intolerance, and the massacre that exists between that was experienced by the Protestant minority in France in 1572 during the Saint Barthélemy massacre. During a night between there was a marriage between the Henry IV, a former Protestant, who was going to be, married to Margaret de Valois, a Catholic, and making him the new king in France. After the massacre of, the Saint Barthélemy, there was an edict of Nantes that was promulgated in 1598, if I remember correctly, to allow the religious tolerance in France, to allow Protestant to practice their religion, or to any other religions. It could be the Jewish religion, the Protestant religion, or the Islamic religion, to be practiced freely. Now, the grandson of Henry IV, Louis XIV, his grandson actually banished the Edict of Nantes in 1686 or 85, and by de facto, the people that were not Catholic were expelled of France. But it was already showing some kind of a refusal from the elite to allow a certain level of openness and tolerance against others. This is just an example, but it kind of showing something that is underlying. And at the same time, you can see that, for example, slavery was abolished by the French Revolution in 1794, and but the dictator Napoleon Bonaparte re-established slavery in French colonies to ensure a consistent revenue stream from the French colonies, and this will benefit naturally the French economy and personally him, I would imagine, as he was extremely corrupted. And slavery was ultimately abolished definitively in 1848. Okay. Now, if you think about it, there's a long and deep history about the colonial empire for France. Okay, the French colonial empire was stretching from North Africa, Western Africa, Central Africa, to the Caribbean, to the Pacific Ocean, to Middle East, like Lebanon, Syria, but also in Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos. So you imagine the stretch of the colonial empire of France was massive. Despite that, France has maintained a complex relationship with its former colonies, which has had a lasting impact on the way they were treating an established relationship with its Black, Arabic, or Asian descendant populations. Okay. This was primarily due to propaganda that was established to portray some level of inferiority of colonial populations. Newspaper utilized this propaganda largely. The human zoos were actually constructed, human zoos. So a zoo where they would be exhibiting people from different colonized territories, people from Africa, Asia, and from the Pacific Ocean. So these structures were actually a stark demonstration of the superiority of the European civilization and colonial ideology. Like if they were, like the Roman and the Greeks pushing civilization towards the barbarians. Okay, you want to fight against barbarism, then in that case you push civilization to them. But they were no more than animals. So do you imagine if you have human zoos, what are the impact on these exhibitions on the people and the individuals who could visit these human zoos? The perception they had about other people that were of different color, different origins, are inferior, they would see them. And at the same time, would you imagine the devastating impacts on the individuals who were the ones that were displayed and treated like animals? The hatred, the resentment, that was profound on both sides. Okay, so it was already established something that was already biased. Okay, now the legacy of this era is still felt today. So you imagine for generation, you pushed this as an idea amongst the French. The French elite was pushing that agenda, that vision about the population from the colonies, and pushing that idea at deeply rooted vision of racism and inferiority against people that had a different skin color and origin. That was influencing the lives of millions of individuals in France and in former colonies. So what does it mean in terms of, in a state like France, what does it mean when you have a situation where for generation they were pushing that agenda, that vision that people that were Black, Arabic, or Arabic and eventually Asian were inferior? Then in that case, you have a systematic discrimination. The process is actually making it difficult for individuals from North Africans or sub-Saharan African descent to secure housing. The cycle of poverty And limited opportunities is the result of marginalization in employment, education, and of course, law enforcement abuses. So as a result, people have no choice but to stay within their own community to find opportunities, to find ways to survive. Okay, and in order to separate the majority, the white majority from the non-white minorities, they were constructing actually, a bar of housing for the people coming from the colonies and allow them to live segregated from the rest of the population. Now it's kind of mixed nowadays because we're still in 2024, but for a long period of time it was staying like this, like the white majority was staying separated from the non-white minorities that were staying in the suburb, in places that were actually places where they were nurturing crime and third level opportunities. But I will explain that in a second. Now, social unrest. The persistent inequality has resulted in social tensions and an excessive level of criminality, as there was a lack of opportunities for former, population from the colonies, has led to third level opportunities such as sideways, opportunities like drug, prostitution, weapon trafficking, and so forth. I'm personally a member of the immigration movement because, as I said, my father was white, yes, and my mother was from Africa. So, as you can see, I'm not white. Okay. So, I would not use racism and discrimination as an excuse to engage in criminal activity. I've never done it. Never, ever. I've never, I never stolen anything in my life. Never. I never stole anything. I never had any problems with justice anywhere I went. But to me, it's a simpler path. But the conditions were so dire and difficult, pushing people against the wall of despair and resulting in poor decisions on their side. And I was really, lucky in my life because my mom and my father gave us a very comfortable life because they were part of the middle class. So I had no issues whatsoever. Okay. But for people that were unlucky, they were facing difficult situations and they had to fight to survive. But as a result, what was the price that France paid and continues to pay today? Because if you're doing something at the systemic level, you pushing racism and discrimination at all levels of the society, and you pushing a vision that people that are not white are inferior, what would be the result? The result is simple. First of all, brain drain. The process by which a significant number of highly skilled individuals from these former colony communities, including myself, who have received a high level of education, they emigrate to other countries in search for better opportunities, greater opportunities, thereby depriving France of valuable talent and expertise. So this pool of talent that they were eventually training and forming through the school system were actually leaving France because they were facing so much racism, so much discrimination that they had no choice but to leave. Otherwise, they wouldn't find any opportunity. I remember a person from Mali who graduated from a PhD in astronomy. He couldn't find any job than working in a McDonald's. As a result, because he kept contact with people in the US, he shared his resume, and then people looked at his resume and said, "What the heck are you doing over there? With no opportunities, with the talent you have?" And they made him come in US, and boom, he was working at NASA, director of an elite program at NASA, and now is part of the government, is part of the political, uh, pool talent in Mali. I'm not even sure what he's doing now, but this is a side story that I wanted to share with you. This is madness if you think about it. Now, second point, economic disparity. If you elevating the threshold of racism and discrimination, so these exacerbate the economic disparity between the majority white population and non-white minorities. Then this is mostly due to a far-right mindset. As people are not from this country, then as they are not white, they will be establishing a significant distance between the white majority and the minority population, and resulting naturally in overall underperformance of the economy. Because think about it, this has really transformed individuals who could have contributed to the development and growth of the French economy, and you turn these individuals as a burden to sustain, because naturally they don't work, but you still have to sustain them. You still have to support them socially. You give them social support, social benefits in order to continue to live in a country, but they don't contribute by themselves. They are a burden to sustain. And as a result, as they don't have any opportunities, what do? They go into crime. They do into drug. They go into prostitution. They go into terrorism. Do you imagine people that were born in France turn to terrorism in France? This is madness. This is totally madness. Now, third, lost economic potential. If you're extending the perspective of the brain drain and economic disparity, it is essentially excluding a large segment of the population from fully contributing to the economy in direct, indirect taxes. Consequently, what are you facing with? You're facing with France would be actively losing economic potential for countless talented individuals who possess knowledge, different capabilities that are literally an untapped pool of individuals that are left alone, completely ignored. In my opinion, this is primarily due to the French elite failure to demonstrate human wisdom, vision, and pragmatism. Because do you imagine the money that is lost, the money that is injected to keep these people quiet, although they don't contribute whatsoever to the economy? Not because they don't want to, because these people, when they are graduated from schools, engineering school, law school, business school, whatever, they're searching jobs. Some of them find opportunities, but most of them don't. So what do they come back to? To what? Side opportunities. That's what I was saying. Side opportunities mean crime. Now, reduced innovation. That's the point number 4, reduced innovation. So reduced innovation. This is actually my favorite part of this concept. Why is that? Because if you closely consider the population segmentation into a desired pool and undesirable groups, then in that case, innovation and creativity are truly being stifled by a lack of diversity and inclusion. Inclusion doesn't mean transgenderism. That's not what I mean. I mean that people from different backgrounds. Because if you take the French elite, are now derived, all of them, from the same privileged background, the same school, the same environment, which resulting in the severe lack of creativity and the shortage of possibility to create diverse perspectives. It means if you take people coming from the same room, they all have the same experience of the room where they come from. But if you take people from different rooms, so then in that case, they have more to share. They are more to share in order to create essential capabilities for problem solving and the development of fresh and new ideas. But if you keep people, if you create consanguinity, then in that case, there will be the level of innovation will dry up naturally. Okay. Now the burdened social cost. Now consider the cost. Now consider for 1 second the cost. Consider the expenses associated with social unrest, crime, related issues that are intrinsically linked to social inequality. Consequently, resources that were supposed to be diverted in areas meant to promote economic development, innovation, and even creativity in industry, in technology. Rather, France has evolved into a land of limited innovation because of all this, where the elite and the financial elite or the social elite and the political elite profit directly from the masses and provide little hope for a better future. Instead of engaging into creativity innovation, they prefer to just use the old recipe, like in the Middle Ages. In the Middle Ages, what they were doing, they were the aristocracy, the clergy, and the tiers état. And then basically the tiers état was representing 95% of the resources generated by the country, and only the 5% left were eating from the 95% that were producing the richness of the country. And this is exactly the situation right now. So the profit from the masses provide little hope for a better future. So it is imperative, due to the current state of affairs in France, it is primarily the result of political figures that have been incapable, unwise, cowardly, and occasionally extremely stupid, as well as corrupted throughout the country's democratic history. For years and years and years. And this is the result. Now you see what I was saying about my personal perspective about France. And it's not about France itself. If you have a country that is eaten inside out or burned inside out by a disease such as racism and discrimination, that's the freaking result. A country that is dying. Today, France is dying. I'm telling you, if you search for information about what's happening in France, there's nothing else in France. No innovation whatsoever. Okay, so that's end of the part 5. If some of the people that will see that video disagree, I'm fine. And if you want to discuss about it, I'm really happy. Put a comment in, and then I'm really open to discussion. I don't have any problem to have people that have disagreement and to have, a cordial conversation. I don't have any problems with that. So now, next step will be my conclusion. It will be a call for unity in diversity.